Thanks, Rick.
Well, good morning to everybody, and welcome to our mini webinar on the AFP Dealer Standards. I say mini because we should be done by 10 o'clock rather than the usual sort of hour and a half. I'd like to introduce our hosts. So that's James Pistell, Zoe Lawson and myself. Just before I get Zoe and James to introduce themselves, I just want to say I've been obviously involved within the AFP and the ICFM and previously ACFO for many years, but currently I'm a director of AFP and also company secretary. Zoe, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. So my name is Zoe Lawson. I'm the head of corporate sales for Marshall Motor Group. Been with the group for 11 years, so really delighted to be part of the AFP Dealer Delivery Standards.
Thank you. James?
Good morning, everyone. I'm James Pistell. I'm on the board of directors of AFP along with Rick. My journey with AFP was previously beforehand as an ACFO director, and I was involved with ACFO since 2014 in various roles, and then joined as an ACFO director just before the merger with the AFP in 2020. So looking forward to talking to you this morning about the AFP Dealer Standards.
Thank you, James. Can you go to the next slide, please? So crucially, why did the AFP dealer standard come about? Well, poor delivery and handover standards, clearly not all dealers, the majority do a great job. But there is no doubt an inconsistency in the handover process, which seemed, I don't know about you guys, but seemed to be heightened in the COVID lockdown and COVID period. I kind of had a eureka moment, really, when I had my car delivered in April 2020. I appreciate that, we were in the middle of COVID times, but I had a ring on the doorbell. The car was left in the road. The credit card key was left on the roof. By the time I went downstairs, the driver was already back in his cab as he put his window down and said, "Nothing to do with me, mate. I'm just delivering it." So, I didn't even know how to lock the car, let alone pair the phone or how to charge it up. So it wasn't a particularly good experience. So from a sort of, if you think about that from a safety and a duty of care perspective, even as, we all are car people, it wasn't a good experience. And I don't really think I was alone in that. And, I suppose, to the point now that cars and vans are becoming more and more complex, with more complex equipment, especially on the EVs. That means that the PDI and the handover of a new vehicle are really becoming even more critical. Have the next slide, please, James. So, as an AFP board, and we met a lot during the lockdown period as well as we started off the AFP. Myself and Denise and James started to have a bit of a moan, I suppose, all seeing issues with standards, but viewing it from very different perspectives. So myself, as an individual, but also recognizing that there was amazingly no standard and no recognition of what good looks like. So, as a leasing company, we have, an SLA, and clearly with the name, we've been, working with Marshall Motor Group and Zoe's team over many years. We were even part of the same business. So, we were okay in most regards. But Denise was, at the time, was fleet operator fleet manager for Capita. She said she needed consistency of handover and documentation, and more importantly, process around delivery, and said it really varied from dealers to dealers. And then James, having also had a poor experience personally, but also seeing the inconsistency within his fleet management role. So we got together and we enlisted Zoe's help to get her thoughts from a dealer perspective as well. So, that really enabled us to really break down and challenge, the whole supply chain, and, really try and document the best practice. Thank you, James. Over to you.
Thanks, Rick. So today, really, I wanted to look at what the aim is of the dealer standard. Well, as you know, those that have joined this morning, that the AFP is there to champion the interests and voice of the fleet operator and also the wider fleet service provider suppliers out there. And in that, the dealer network is a vital part of the fleet market. We all recognise that. And as AFP, we really wanted to engage with this community and have them adopt a set of standards around delivery and the order process. Obviously, when we set up the dealer standards, it was completely voluntary, and it is voluntary for dealers to join. But the aim is predominantly for lease and fleet providers to adopt these standards in their general fleet supply. We recognise at AFP that there are many, many corporate dealers that are doing a fantastic job day in, day out. So signing up to the dealer standards gives them recognition of the fact that they are doing this and that they are upholding anyway the standards that we've set up. But really, what we also want to do is call out perhaps those dealers who are prepared or tempted to cut corners with the delivery and handover process, and perhaps care more about the numbers of vehicle registrations in a given month and volume, rather than the end user fleet driver. Really positive news already since the launch, and it was our aim when we set these up as well, is that we wanted the leasing companies to engage with the dealer standards. And we've already been approached by a number of leasing companies. There'll be more details of that coming out in the coming weeks and months. But these leasing companies, including Marshall Leasing, who Rick works for, are using this standard within their SLAs. And also fleet management companies, such as the company I work for, are also asking their dealers to adopt the standards. But you may be coming on this morning onto this webinar and you're a fleet operator and you're going to say, well, what does this mean for me? What do the dealer standards mean for me? Well, you as a fleet operator can play your part by scrutinising the supplying dealers that you use and ensure that they're using the standards. And if they are using the standards, you'll ultimately benefit from them, and your drivers will as well. And I think by every part of the fleet industry being involved with the dealer standards, we want this to become the go-to standards from now onwards in the supply and delivery of fleet vehicles. So what are the benefits of the dealer standard? Well, Rick has mentioned already, we've all seen, most of us involved in the industry, the wide and varied inconsistency currently experienced in fleet orders and deliveries. So if we achieve widespread adoption of these standards, we can ensure that there'll be significant benefits ultimately for the fleet operator and the drivers. But fundamentally, some of the benefits are that we want drivers to have a positive and informative experience upon delivery and handover. And it's vital that this happens on fleet deliveries. We've seen in dealers that we've dealt with in the past that they're perhaps very good at dealing with retail customers, but perhaps in the fleet world, the standard of handover is somewhat lacking. But fleet vehicles should have no less inferior handover to a retail order. And because of perhaps the inconsistencies that we've seen in this, is that we can think about how much time and cost is being spent following up post-delivery on issues and resolutions due to poor handovers. what we want is that better controls are in place because of the dealer standards, and there is less time for the dealer, for the fleet manager going up behind trying to fix and resolve these issues that have happened because of a poor handover. But another area really that perhaps some haven't thought about is that handover in particular is more critical than ever with the uptake and increase of electric vehicles. And we've got to remember that it perhaps on the vehicle deliveries that are happening now with electric vehicles, it could be the first EV that the customer or driver may have driven in their life. And it's the first time that they've driven an electric vehicle, particularly because of the lead time delays. Drivers perhaps are just ordering the vehicle because they're not going to get the vehicle for 12 months or more. So they're just wanting an electric vehicle because they can see the benefits of that, but not having the chance to drive it beforehand or experience one. So we need to be really mindful of that when we undertake the handovers. And with electric vehicles, clearly there is technology that is different in an electric vehicle, such as the vehicle regenerative braking when you let go of the accelerator pedal. And there are efficiency settings within the vehicle that the drivers need to be aware of. They need to know how to charge their electric vehicle and what the process is. And there may be settings that you can make sure that the vehicle charges overnight at a lower cost of energy. All these experience and knowledge needs to be given to the driver so they know how to effectively use it. So again, there are settings in regards to driver modes that can be changed to make the vehicle run more efficiently and use less battery power. But also the driver needs to be aware, the end user driver needs to be aware perhaps of the rapid acceleration difference with an electric vehicle. So there is a duty of care element involved in the handover process that we've got to be really mindful of. And again, a lot of the vehicles that are being delivered now have touchscreen displays where things even like windscreen wipers are now controlled within the touchscreen display. So there are safety critical items where there once was a stalk or a button on the dashboard that clearly showed where it was. They can sometimes now be within a touchscreen menu system. So again, we need on the handover for the end user driver to be fully aware of what's going on. It's vital from a duty of care perspective. But where we really see the benefit, if all handovers are based on the AFP standard, both the driver and the fleet operator will benefit from a consistent supply rather than this perhaps hit and miss approach that we've seen all too often in the industry. But perhaps the other benefit from AFP and the other benefit of the dealer standards from a fleet operator and a fleet service provider is that when you're searching perhaps for a new vehicle dealer supply arrangement, that you can now benefit. If you're an AFP member, you'll be able to access a list of those dealers that have signed up to the dealer standards, so you can avoid potential issues down the line. And again, if you get your vehicles via a leasing company, ask them whether the dealers that they are using have adopted or signed up to the AFP dealer standards. And if not, you could even nominate your own dealer for that particular make or model of vehicle who does use the standards. So I'd recommend you look into that. But what is the benefit from the dealer point of view? Well, if you sign up as a dealer to the dealer standards, this gives you all the other benefits that other AFP members get. So you would get access to our webinars, our conference, you'd get discount on training through the AFP Academy. Again, that will give wider insight and resource that perhaps you may not get already through your manufacturer contacts. So there is a real benefit as a dealer by signing up to these standards, because you get access to that wider insight and breadth of knowledge to support your operation and corporate clients. Also, all dealers that sign up can use the AFP Dealer Standards approved logo, which is shown here on the screen. And you can use that in any of your sales material collateral. You could show it on your corporate website and also in your email signature as a means of recognition that you have adopted the AFP Dealer Standards. I'm now going to hand over to Zoe Lawson from Marshall Motor Group, who's going to explain further the benefits and considerations from a dealer perspective. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, James. So from a dealer point of view, for me, I really welcomed the opportunity to work with the AFP on putting together these standards. There are a few things that really I recognised and took into consideration whilst we were having the initial conversations. And one of the key things for me was about reputation. We work with a number of leasing companies, a number of fleet management companies and end user fleet operators who I recognise during the supply process that the one point in time at which a fleet driver actually sees somebody face to face is usually at delivery and handover. So it's then the reputation of us as a dealer group, of a leasing company, of a fleet operator, a fleet management company, anybody involved in the process, our whole reputation stems on that one moment in time where the delivery of a new vehicle is handed over to an actual fleet driver. So I think it's really important from everybody involved in the supply chain that we recognise that and work to a set of standards that actually enables us to have a good reputation with those fleet drivers. And another factor was basic vehicle training. And as James said before, things change all the time within vehicles. As dealers, it is really difficult to keep up sometimes with the various changes inside a vehicle, particularly with the infotainment system, satellite navigation, Bluetooth, settings on vehicles, CarPlay. So at the very minimum, a driver should be offered the opportunity to pair a phone, to set up their satellite navigation, to be shown how to use the CarPlay settings and other basic vehicle settings on that vehicle before they leave. Understanding that not all fleet drivers want that. Some are quite happy to do it themselves, but it should absolutely be offered at the point of handover. It's really critical that a fleet driver understands what the vehicle can do that they're about to start driving. And again, I completely agree with what James said. The take-up of electric vehicles has been staggering over the last 12 to 18 months with fleet drivers. Obviously, as a result of the benefit in kind payments for them. But it's critical that as dealers, firstly, pre-delivery, that we keep that driver informed of what they may need to know with regards to cards that charge up those vehicles, and what will happen when the vehicle is delivered, how that vehicle works and operates as an electric vehicle. But then at handover, that the delivery driver shows the fleet driver where the charging cables are, how to plug them into their charge point, how all of the different elements in the car that mean that how that vehicle works as an electric vehicle, which may be different to a diesel or a petrol vehicle that they've had in the past. So it's become more critical than ever that the delivery and handover experience is a really, really good and positive one for a fleet driver. If you can move on to the next slide, please, James. So the other benefit and the real reason for me wanting to be involved in this was I welcomed the opportunity for there to be an industry set of standards that actually we can use with third-party delivery agents. So we, as Marshall Motor Group, we deliver over 20,000 vehicles a year to fleet drivers. So with the best one in the world, we can't have our own we don't have enough internal drivers to be able to do that ourselves. And I know that there's a number of other fleet dealer groups out there who also have to use third-party delivery agents. So to have a set of standards that is considered the industry standard to work with these third-party delivery agents on to make sure that they also adhere to what we need them to give a good delivery experience to our customers, I felt that was really vital and was a really great idea. It provides consistency as well, as both James and Rick alluded to before. Now we have within our group, we have various different franchises, from volume franchises, Vauxhall, Peugeot, Kia, Hyundai, to prestige vehicle franchises like Jaguar, Land Rover, Mercedes, Audi. But that delivery experience shouldn't be any different, regardless of the franchise that you're having delivered. And this set of standards, I think, will help us to make sure that that is more consistent every single time. It also provides us with a form of measurement that we can then have regular review meetings with our delivery agents, with our internal drivers, to make sure that they are meeting those standards as we would expect them to. If there are any issues that have arisen, that we can deal with them, we put them right straight away. And at the same time, it provides us with a set of standards to use with our own dealer network. So with the guys that are actually at the coalface of arranging deliveries, of working with fleet drivers, may have communication with a fleet driver pre-delivery, certainly have to make sure that that vehicle is ready to be delivered and collected by a delivery driver, and that that is done in the right way, that there's a vehicle delivery pack if it's required in that vehicle, there's mats, anything else that has been requested by the fleet operator, leasing company or fleet management company, that that's done before the vehicle is collected. But that also, when we're arranging a particular delivery for a customer, that the requirements for that particular customer are laid out to the third-party delivery agent. It also gives us something with which to work with fleet operators, leasing companies, as a way for them to give feedback to us as dealer groups to make sure that we are doing what we need to be doing. Sometimes it's only after the event that we find out that something we thought had gone well hadn't gone quite as well as it should have done. So it's really important that keeps an open dialogue going between all parties to make sure that we consistently ensure these standards are met each and every time. If you can move on to the next slide, please, James. So finally, some of the other things that were really important to me when we were putting these standards together that I wanted to make sure were taken into consideration. One of the main things was cost control. What I didn't want to happen as part of these standards was that we created a set of standards which were the ideal and what we all wanted, but that actually increased costs significantly. So it had to be done in a way, we all work with sort of in a very marginal part of the sector in terms of profitability margins. And there were certain elements I didn't want to be included in there if it was going to increase significant costs for either us as a dealer group or a leasing company or a fleet management company. So what I felt was really important was that actually we created a set of standards that was about doing the basics very, very well. And in actual fact, these standards should be the basic and minimum standards that any fleet driver should expect from a delivery. Most dealer groups that do fleet on a regular basis and do it very well would probably exceed these on most cases, and that's what I would certainly expect for us at Marshall. And the final consideration was around COVID-19 and the pandemic. And when we came out of the first lockdown, we actually created a list of delivery agents who had a set of COVID-19 delivery standards that were very, very strict at the time because of the restrictions that we had in place as a country. And we were conscious while we were developing these standards that actually as time went on, restrictions would be lifted, that there wouldn't be so much of a requirement for the sanitisation that we'd maybe had originally. But what we wanted to make sure was done as part of the standards was that the best practices that came out of COVID-19 and the restrictions that we had in place were continued. So things like sanitising steering wheels, gear sticks if there is one in a car, any touch points that come should still be wiped down prior to handing that vehicle over to a driver. Equally, a set of keys should be sanitised or kept in a plastic bag. Again, not so much that it would mean increased costs for any of us, but so that it was done so that a fleet driver would feel comfortable in terms of how their vehicle was handed over to them. So this was about, for me, creating a consistently good service level that should be the minimum that a fleet driver would expect, but also it makes sure that we still maintain a competitive pricing structure for all concerned. Okay, thanks, James. Back over to you.
Thank you, Zoe. That's great. And you may be asking then, after we've talked a lot about the dealer standards this morning, well, what is in the dealer standards? Well, the dealer standard is available on the AFP website, the afp.co.uk, and the dealer standard page can be found in the drop-down burger menu on the right-hand side. So the dealer standards themselves, there are 28 standards currently, and the standards themselves are broken down into 4 separate key areas. The first area is pre-delivery standards, which covers aspects of the order process, lead time updates, support and guidance prior to delivery of the vehicle. The next area is about how the vehicle should be handed over upon delivery and the expectations regarding this. The third area is regarding what is expected of the delivery driver themselves and their conduct. And then finally, the last section is regarding the handover itself, including what support, guidance and information is to be given to the customer, as well as the sign-off process of the vehicle itself. And as mentioned by Zoe a few moments ago, the standards are not designed to add new levels of cost or administration to the dealer, but these standards are what should be done now as a minimum. If they're not being done, they should be done going forward in regards to all fleet orders and deliveries. So over to you now, Rick.
Thanks, James. So, crucially, if we've got a standard in play, clearly we need to be able to, monitor and then feedback on the actual standard itself. So, how do we measure the success of these standards? Well, there's an annual sign-off process, and that's really important, because what that means is, there's a document isn't just e-signed and left on a laptop somewhere. There's a reaffirmment to the standards on an annual basis, and crucially, that needs to be signed by a dealer colleague with operational responsibility. In other words, they'll be able to control the standards actually being adhered to, and that's really important. There's also a process for AFP members' feedback that will be given in the members area, and that's for good and bad, and no doubt there will be a lot of good, and that will be monitored by us, the AFP board, with crucially an escalation process. And as well, both Zoe and James had mentioned, this standard is as much for fleet operators, as borne out by Denise's involvement, as it is, for dealers. So, it's for all parts of the supply chain. Thanks, James.
Cheers, Rick. So how do you get involved? Well, if you've not done so already, you can sign up to the dealer standards via our website, and you'll be in great company, as we've already had an excellent uptake already for these standards since we released them a month or so ago. As well as one of the founding dealer members, which was obviously Marshall Motor Group and Zoe's involvement, you would have seen recently in the fleet press that Sytner Group and Inchcape have also signed up to the dealer standards. But we're also delighted that there are many other dealers that have signed up in the last month, including some medium-sized and smaller dealers, which in turn will benefit their customers too. As mentioned, the dealer standards page can be found on our website in the drop-down menu. And if you're not the decision maker within your corporate fleet department, then please provide these details to your fleet director or head of corporate or dealer principal, so that they can sign up easily through the online sign up page. The whole process is now automated, and you can then sign up and pay online, and it's a real slick process. So I would recommend you do that following this webinar. For fleet operators and suppliers out there, please encourage any dealers that you use to sign up to the standards if they're not done so already. Do ask them, have you signed up to the AFP Dealer Standards? Because the more who do sign up to the dealer standards, the more widespread the benefits of the dealer standards will give to the fleet industry as a whole, and that's what we're looking to do here. So the link is there below at the bottom of the page, and yeah, please do get involved. So I'm now going to come on to the Q&A session, and we've had a few questions. If you've not done so already, please add any questions in the Q&A chat boxes, and we'd love to see and hear your questions. But the first question, and I probably can answer that myself, that I've been asked is, what are the costs involved for signing up to the dealer standard? Well, if you're a dealer with less than 10 showrooms, then the annual fee is £299. And then if you have 10 or more showrooms in your dealer group, then the annual fee is £500 per annum. So we feel that this represents good value, and clearly, as mentioned earlier, you get the benefits of being a AFP member as well, and what that brings with it. So that's quite a competitive offering there. So again, that can all be done through our website online. The next question that we've been asked is, we are a leasing company and want to use the standards as part of our dealer service level agreements. Can we do so? Rick, did you want to answer that one as from a leasing company perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we as a leasing company, Marshall Leasing, clearly we will have a service level agreement in with the dealerships that we use, and in the main, that's no secret, that's Marshall Motor Group. And clearly, you know, for me, it's a little bit easier because, you know, I've been working with Zoe on the standards, but no, I would encourage you to review the standards that you have in place with your dealerships. And, you know, if you compare them to the standards, you might well be doing many of these things already, but I'd ask you to compare and contrast your existing service level agreement and slot this one in. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We've genuinely endeavoured to think about all the different areas. I would say, though, that, you know, these standards will evolve. I know that was mentioned on one of the other slides. So, you know, we are, you know, really open to suggestions on betterment for these standards as they do evolve.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, and just to add to that, it's been quite exciting as well that we've had a number of AFP leasing company members that have already approached us. I'm sure there'll be more going out in the press in the coming months that have now said that they're going to insist that all their dealers adopt the standards as a minimum. So I think it'd be really good to see that, and that will of course then encourage more to get involved as well. So yes, the leasing companies certainly have got a part to play in asking their dealer networks to adopt the standards too, if they're not already signed up. And probably now the next question we've had is one for you, Zoe, is how can I implement these standards if I use third-party delivery agents to deliver new vehicles?
So really it's about working with that third-party agent to make sure that they can meet all of the standard requirements that we've set out in the agreement. So for me, it's actually a really good tool to be able to use with our third-party agents to go through with them our expectations firstly, but then to continuously review that service level with them to make sure that what we've signed up to is what they can do for us as one of our partners in the supply chain.
Thanks, Zoe.
Hope that answers that.
That's brilliant, thank you. And then Rick, probably another question, probably our final question, is obviously that you spoke a little bit about the evaluation and follow-up. What in regards can a fleet operator do if there was an issue in regards to a dealer that was signed up to the standards that clearly had failed to meet the standard in part? What can they do if they're an AFP member?
Well, I mean, first off, it would be to flag it up through the means that I said. And then, you know, no doubt there'd be some sort of conversation first off with the fleet operator, and then, you know, with the dealer involved. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you know, no dealership will want to do a bad job. Everybody wants to do a good job. But, you know, we recognize that, you know, things happen. You know, things aren't necessarily within your control, and things can go awry. So I'd say it would be about communication, and then just ensuring that obviously as the AFP, we understand the issue, and then we can relay that to the dealer, who will no doubt want to have rectified that.
Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate that. I'm going to hand over now to Rick just to give an update on news and dates coming up.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. We are at the end of this session, but I just wanted to have a shameless sales plug for the AFP. This slide epitomizes what we do. So, you know, from a courses point of view, that's the training, and that's the ICFM part of the AFP. You know, that was that side of things. And then from conference, well, for those of you who can remember, that's very much what ACFO stood for. So, you know, joining the AFP, it's about training and it's about best practice. So if I just, you know, just look at what we're up to at the moment, we've got courses on funding and finance, EVs and strategic fleet management. Please take a look at our website. We've had some amazing feedback. In fact, I was being told this morning that our EV course, and there are more available, as it says there. One of our colleagues said the EV course was the best course they've ever been on. So, you know, some amazing feedback. And then we have our conference, 18th of May, British Motor Museum, and it's in person. It's not online. We've had an amazing sign up already, 125 people. That's absolutely fantastic. But, you know, what we'll be doing, it's free to membership. We'll be covering EV charging infrastructure, the trouble with vans as a panel session, curbside charging activities, delivering a smart EV highway, data and telematics to optimize EVs, salary sacrifice, hints and tips, and, you know, basically that's absolutely amazing content. So I'd urge you to sign up. Spaces are limited, so please do so via the website. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Rick. And yeah, thanks everyone for attending today. It's been great that you've joined us. And as I say, if you haven't done so already, go to the AFP website, go to the drop down, look up the dealer standards, and it'd be great to have you involved with it. So thank you. And thanks also to Rick, and thanks to Zoe.
Thanks, guys.